Hello, my beautiful IU. This is Mark Mangus again, the digital shaman, and I have a very special guest today, Jeremy Chenvert, who's a fellow shamanic practitioner. And we're talking about shamanic practice and its effect or energy work's effect on PTSD and stress disorders and anxiety, kind of the whole host of it. And Jeremy's got some very personal experience with all this, and this is kind of his medicine, as we say in our circles, and what he's bringing to the world as healing work. So, Jeremy, why don't you introduce us to who you are and how you came to this work and
Yep.
kind of how you approach it?
All right, yeah, my name is Jeremy Chimvert. I'm the owner practitioner at Pacific Northwest Shamanic Healing, and I do try to specialize more in the PTSD field and trauma. Uh, Reason for that being was I am a veteran. I was in the Army for 8 years. I got out around 2012, and I didn't realize at the time that I had PTSD, or I didn't want to admit it. Let's put it that way. Because I was one of those, I didn't feel that what I went through was enough to warrant me having PTSD. I wasn't shot, I wasn't blown up. Everything when I would go out on missions would happen right before me or right after me, but it was never to my vehicle, it was never to me. And so I had that mindset of, well, it didn't happen to me, so I can't have PTSD. I didn't suffer any trauma. And it really was me getting out of the military a couple months after coming back from Afghanistan. That's when my contract ended. So I came back in July, August, and then you spend that time working your way to get out, doing all the paperwork,
Mhm.
turning in gear and all that stuff. And I was just angry all the time, and I didn't understand why. I was never an angry person. Like I was broken a little bit with my shoulder and my back, but that was mostly from constant physical labor and like moving stuff. I used to have to take equipment onto helicopters when I was downrange and then fly it to another base to get it repaired and then fly it back to another base to drop it off. And so that took toll on me as well. But again, nothing, I wasn't blown up. I wasn't shot. So I didn't think it was bad enough. And so that led me down this path of, well, what can I do? And I still didn't want to admit it for a while. And it wasn't until I'm not happy that it happened, but it's my wife and I were getting into an argument and I just got so mad. I just wanted to hit something and I didn't want to hit her and I didn't want to hit my newborn. So it's like I literally just punched a hole in the wall. I was
Yeah.
just so angry. I just punched right through the drywall. I'm lucky there wasn't a stud there and broke my hand. And then from there, I was like, oh, I need to do something. And so I went to the VA and I was like, look, I got to get looked at. Something's going on. I don't know what it is. And the first question is, are you going to hurt yourself? It's like, I don't plan on it,
Mhm.
but something needs to change. I don't know
Yeah.
what to do. And they're like, well, here, take these pills. And then we have group therapy talk. I think at the time it was like Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. I just got out of the military. I just got a job. I can't just leave work to go to a group session at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And some of this might have changed now, but at that time, that was the only option.
Mhm.
And so I took the pills for a little bit, but they just numb you. Like they don't fix anything. They don't make it go away. They just numb you. And then when you do explode, it's even more violent than what it
Yeah.
was if I wasn't taking the pills. So then I stopped taking the pills. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I didn't care about anything. I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to do anything.
Mhm.
And so I went to a psychiatrist when I was getting out. You have to go and, claim your disability and stuff like that. So one of those processes was I had to talk to a shrink to see how bad my PTSD really was. And the guy was like, well, you have minor PTSD, so we really can't do anything for you. And then he just told me straight up, he's like, look, there's a lot of evidence for it. There's a lot of medical research being done on it, but I can't officially tell you this. He's like, if you just smoke a little bit of marijuana each day, it'll help rewire your synapses and kind of let things grow again, and it rewires the brain. I'm like, all right, I used to do that when I was younger.
Mhm.
So, and then I started doing that, but I wasn't doing it every day, all day. It was just at night.
Mhm.
It was the kids would go to bed, we'd clean up everything, I'd smoke a bowl, and then I would just sit on the couch, be really stupid, eat a bunch of food, and not be happy with myself. But I
Mhm.
wasn't angry anymore.
Right.
And I did this for God, 5, 6 years.
Mhm.
And then that was getting too much because now I gained more weight. My body was hurting even more from the food I was eating.
Mhm.
My shoulder was all messed up with the inflammation. I wasn't taking care of myself, but I was functioning. I was working, I was driving, I was making good money, taking care of everything. So again, I was like, all right, I guess this is my life now. This is it. This is what I'm
Mhm.
doing. And then at some point, my wife, she did something called the Landmark Forum. And so it's kind of
Mhm.
shamanic in its own way. So
Mhm.
basically, you learn your stories.
Mhm.
And so everyone has these stories from basically when they're born to about 16, 17. You have three main key moments in your life that define you.
Mhm.
And I started going down that path, but it still wasn't enough for me. I still wasn't getting what I needed. I identified some things, but it didn't fully help me identify. I was still getting those anger outbursts. I was still getting not happy with myself. And a lot of that was stemming from smoking weed every day too. But my life just wasn't complete. It didn't feel like it was where I needed to be, where I should be. And then at some point, my wife and I, it was getting more rockier. We were almost got a divorce, basically, is
Mhm.
what it was. We were fighting
Mhm.
all the time. None of our friends knew that because outside of home, we were happy and everybody thought we were great. But at home, we were just getting in more fights because what I was doing wasn't working anymore. And then going to the forum was unlocking more stuff that I needed to address.
Mhm.
But they teach you a little bit how to address it, but it wasn't the same way as what I learned through the shamanic practices.
Mhm.
And so then and I still today cannot tell you what brought me to shamanism. I don't know. But at some point, all my Facebook ads were showing shamanic teachers and shamanic classes. My Amazon book reviews were showing me shamanic books. Like I was
Yeah.
getting drumming tracks, like all this stuff just kept coming up to me. And I still don't understand it. But at some point, and I had him as a guest on my show, but Paul Francis from England, he runs a shamanic school there. And I got the first three of his books, and I'm just going through them and I'm doing all the exercises. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I wish he would do classes. And I'm looking at all these other classes, and they're out of my price range. I can't afford it.
Mhm.
I'm still stuck in that mindset of this isn't going to work. I'm not going to
Right.
spend this kind of money. Why am I doing that? I'm not going to put my family in jeopardy by going into debt. Like, I'm not going to do it. And then I found out that he does teach core shamanism, and it was like $100 for an intro class.
Mhm.
I was like, I can do that. And that just shifted everything.
Mhm.
I met my power animal, I met my human spirit guides. I'm understanding things, I'm doing soul retrieval work. And this was all just in the format of core shamanism, not even the Andean stuff that we do
Mhm.
now. I mean, this was real basic stuff. And everything just started clicking.
Mhm.
And then suddenly a friend of mine, she comes to visit. She hadn't been over for a while. And she's like, yeah, I just did this ayahuasca retreat. It was great, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, where did you go? I've always been curious. She's like, oh, just right down the road, next town over. This so-and-so does it. I'm like, all right, I need to do that. And then that just opened everything up. And the lady doing the ayahuasca retreat was also looking into working at the Four Winds. And I had mentioned that I wanted to go there, but I couldn't afford it. She's like, oh, they do scholarships. It's like, what? Yeah. She's like, you just sign up, call them, talk to them, tell them what you can afford, and they'll usually work with you. So I'm like, okay. And Wednesday, I set up the meeting for that Wednesday, filled out my application. 2 days later, they're like, yeah, you're approved. You'll start on Monday. I'm like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing. And really just that journey of just trying all these different things.
Hmm.
Again, shamanism itself isn't the final key for a lot of people. Like when I work with people, I look at the mind, the body, and the spirit because you have to look at the holistic approach for everyone. It's not just meeting your spirit guides, but it's, working on your body movement, releasing those somatic imprints
Hmm.
as well as the energetic imprints, and then using your breath work to reset the fight or flight. And so it's a three-prong approach that you have to really work with
Hmm.
people. And that's kind of what that is the process that I do now with people is that three-prong approach. It's,
Hmm.
just meeting your power animal isn't going to be enough, and just working on breath work isn't enough. You
Yeah.
need to utilize everything. So that's the long and short of my story.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. It was very vulnerable and very powerful, and I'm sure a lot of it people that are watching can relate to a lot of aspects of your story. I know I can. I had didn't serve in the military, but I did uh, a stint in a men's group that was really more emotionally based than spiritually based for about 9 years, and that's kind of where I learned the peer counseling techniques that I use now. But a lot of veterans in that group, and I was younger then, and it really I won't say shocked. Their story shocked me, but it was it made it very poignant what veterans go through, put it that way. That it's not something that anybody taught, especially then. I mean, now it's a little bit different, right? But back then, 20 years ago, it was like you were stigmatized if you couldn't operate anymore, using the military term. And, they teach you how to operate in this 3 foot field of awareness around you, right? So that you know exactly what you're doing, you know exactly what your buddy next to you is doing. And that doesn't work so well when you come back.
No. And even now it's still that way. You have to compartmentalize what's going on
Yeah.
or you can't function. You just have to. I mean, one example was I was on mission through Mosul and we were convoy security and I'm a E2, E3 at the time, low rank and I'm just driving the truck and I'm a computer guy. So that's even the other thing is like it's not really my job to go out and kick in doors, but every now and then you just got to go and that's
Right.
fine. And I'm driving the front truck, and before us we have a scout truck. We go up this hill, and it was before curfew and stuff. And this family's coming down in a Ford Focus, and the scout truck is basically like a SWAT car, the
Mhm.
ASV. It's got the back door that opens. It's got a gun turret on top, and it's coming up. And the Focus didn't see him in time, and they're trying to move, and they turn, and the ASV hits and literally just flies and rolls. And the gun turret is actually held on by like four little bolts. The gunner's in a cage. He flies out when the thing's spinning in the air and lands upside down. If he hadn't been wearing his helmet, his head would have been crushed. And unfortunately, one of the passengers in that car did die. And again, like I said, it happened before me, but it didn't happen to me.
Mhm.
And so you block that out and like, well, it is what it is.
Right.
We tried to take care of everything. We did all that stuff and did our best to get the chopper in to save the lady. Like we did all of that stuff that we were supposed to, but that stuff still sits with you,
Yeah.
and looking back on it now is like, somebody's mom died that day
Yeah.
by a stupid accident. There was no gunfire. It wasn't a stray bullet. It was the driver didn't see us coming because of the way the hill was designed and
Hmm.
somebody died.
Yeah. And it stays with you as we know now from the shamanic work that your body carries those
Yep.
memories. It's not just your psyche or your spirit, your body, it's actually a somatic thing, right? And it can cause disease if it's not adjusted or integrated or whatever word you want to use, right? But it's in your body, that stress, that PTSD, that anxiety.
Yeah, even re talking, it's like it's coming back, and it's like, all right,
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yeah, but it's right. You got to let it figure out ways to let it go. But I want to pull a thread from your story, which
Mm,
really is the nature of belief. What came through to me so powerfully as you were relating your personal experience was the role of belief. Because you said at some points, well, I don't believe that's going to work, and I'm not going to spend the money and things like that. But at some point, you started believing that this, whatever this is, was going to help you.
yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that shift? Because I think that's something that a lot of people that are listening may have not gone through yet.
And to be honest, it really didn't fully shift until I did my first journey.
Hmm.
So it even to the point of me signing up for this class, which at the time they were only live classes. So I was literally up at 2 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast to take a class from England at 8 o'clock in the morning their time. And I something just told me you have to do this. And at that point, I was like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I don't even know if it was really me consciously thinking, well, this will save my marriage. This could save my life. It was, I don't know what else to do and I need to do
Yeah.
something. And so it wasn't until I did the first journey and then I met my power animal, which was monkey. And then I started researching what gifts the monkey brings, which was like, playfulness, family, taking care of each other, community. And
Mhm.
those were the things I was missing,
Yeah.
was that community. And that's the medicine that monkey brought to me was community. And then things just kept shifting after that. And
Hmm.
it really wasn't until that first time I did it that I believed that this works. And even my teacher was, because we asked, it was like, how much is this real? Is it made up? He's like, yes, you
Yes,
know,
exactly.
like 90% of it, 80% of it is probably just a way of your mind shaping it so that you can understand it.
Right.
But there's that 10 to 20% that you get shown something that is so useful to you and real that
Yeah.
you have no idea about it at all. Like getting shown a stone or a flower, something that you can use as medicine. And then when you look up the properties, it's exactly what you need.
Hmm.
Same with a power animal. It's exactly
Hmm.
what you need. And I've had so many clients who are like, I'm just letting you know, I don't believe in any of this. I was like, I don't need you to believe. I just need you to allow me to do it.
Hmm.
Like, and then the next session they come back. I don't know what you did, but it works.
Hmm.
I know. I don't know it either. Like, I'm still learning it. Like, I can't explain half the stuff that comes up for me in a session for clients. It is what it is. You just got
Yeah,
to let it
that's
happen.
where we just have to trust and surrender to the process, right? As long as they can do that to some degree, then they can experience it.
Yep.
I love what you said too about community because that's something that's like an aha or an epiphany that we share in my own journey of 12 years with physical chronic pain. Um, when you're in that much pain, physical or mental, the last thing you want to do is be around people.
Yep.
We pull into our shell like a turtle and close the curtains, and we don't want to talk to anybody. And it makes it really hard on a relationship, let alone having a community or friends, right?
Well, especially as men too, because we're
Yes.
taught that we're supposed to be the strength, we're the pillar, we take care of things. If somebody has to take care of us, now we're weak.
Yeah.
And take that even to the military side. We're the protectors. We're supposed to be the protectors. Politics aside of what's going on where and there, like a lot of people sign up because they believe in protecting their family or their country.
Yeah.
That's why they sign up.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a few that are bad, but 99% they're there because they believe in what they're doing.
Right.
And then they don't want to be that burden when they come back. They don't want
Yeah.
to be having to be taken care of by their family. And then that just breaks those relationships.
Yeah. And that's part of the shift we have to go through in healing this kind of for lack of a better way to say it, stress disorder, whatever form it is, right? Is to understand that spirit had this in mind. This is all happening for us individually, right? Because without that catalyst, we don't transform. So the choice is always there, right? The choice is I can wallow in it and I can reinforce the pattern and I can, struggle and punch holes in walls and take on addictions and things like that, which is super common, right? Or I can realize that this is catalyst. This is a bundle of lessons for me to take on and become somebody else, become a healed version of who I am now, right?
Yeah, exactly. The trauma, the PTSD, I mean, the way I look at it is you can have trauma without PTSD, but you can't have PTSD without the trauma.
Yeah.
It all goes together. And trauma is such a it's a perceived notion because again, I didn't perceive it as being trauma, but I could tell you my story and you're like, dude, you went through some crap. And it's
Yeah.
like, it doesn't seem like it to me because I've heard
Hmm.
worse.
Right, right, right.
So trauma is very perceptive, and it's understanding that, yeah, you might not feel it's that bad, but if your life isn't where it needs to be, what can you do about it? Because no
Yeah,
one can help you unless you help yourself first,
right.
even if it's that first step of asking for help.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that a lot of people forget. They don't know how to do it, or
Mhm.
they push people away so far that now they're afraid to ask for help.
Right.
And then it's those who live with someone like that, they also need to see the other side of just because they're asking for help doesn't mean they need to tell you what they went through just yet.
Hmm.
You just need to help them where they need it and understand when they're ready to talk to you that
Hmm.
they will, because you're not going to fully understand it right away unless you've
Yeah.
been there. Like nobody understands driving through IED Alley on Hershey Highway and going through Baghdad unless you've been there.
Yeah.
You don't know what
Well,
it's like.
and sharing it in its full expression could be traumatizing for the person who's trying to help you.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's asking for help. I love that. And it's the asking for help that is not modeled for us as men. We have to figure out our own way to that, right? And understand that it's not weak. And what we learn in the shamanic medicine is that our wounds are our power, not only for our own transformation, but that's what connects us to other people who are wounded. And that's the catalyst for that transformation. So totally has shifted my thinking around being wounded and being
Yep.
on the journey of the wounded healer, really. The most powerful healers are the ones that have had or are still healing, had the wounds, right?
Yep.
So yeah, that's amazing. And the community thing, that's a real recent one for me because I was in pain and isolating myself for so long. And now I feel like a completely different person because I'm in community and everything I'm doing is in community. All the work that I do, or at least I try to be
Yeah.
inclusive and bring people in. And I can tell you it's like a whole different lifestyle. I mean, I experience so much more joy and fulfillment and connection and all the things because I allowed that in. And that's the key is allowing, right? It's not something you seek or build or create or any of those, male energy words. It's just something that you allow
Mhm.
and it will come.
No, I agree. And yeah, community is the most important thing. And then just kind of going back a little bit to using the shamanic practices, one misconception I get a lot is, well, I don't want to be a shaman. I don't want to be a healer. It's like, well, you don't have to be. You can do these practices, the journey work, finding your guides, and building that spiritual community along with your physical community
Mhm.
without ever being a quote unquote shaman. You don't need to
Mhm.
go through initiation rites. You don't need to get some healing on a top of a mountain from some great guru. That's cool if you want to, but you don't have to. You can use a lot of the same techniques and principles without that. And that's
Yeah.
one thing I try to get through people too, is you don't have to walk my path to get this healing. You can just take some of these techniques and do it on your own.
Right. It's really I'm so happy you brought that up because we're kind of going through that in the 12-week program that I'm leading right now is um, the lifestyle medicine aspect of it. right? It's how you live, how you eat, how you move, how you interact with people, how you treat yourself. It's really a process of becoming your own guru, is how I look at it,
Yeah.
using these techniques, and they're ancient techniques. And a lot of the body and for lack of a better term, psychology of this work um, is being proven out by cutting edge science now, whether it's quantum healing or positive psychology or some of the food science stuff that I'm really close to because of my own journey. Um, these are ancient things, but they're being proven by modern techniques more and more. In lifestyle medicine, that term, you didn't even hear that term 10 years ago. And now it's mainstream.
Yeah.
And health insurers and health providers both are starting to understand how much less expensive it is to help people become healthy than treat disease. And so these big insurers that are in my technology job that I deal with these companies all the time because that's my focus. Some of them are doing some really surprising things because they're taking all the data they've had for decades on social determinants of health, for example, and they're doing things like building community farms and farmers markets in the middle of food deserts. They're finding ways to uh, home the unhomed in places where people often end up in an emergency room because of what they were exposed to in the environment because they didn't have a home. So how much more expensive is that?
Yeah.
So it's just some of it seems like common sense, but I think we get so caught up in the way things are and how it applies to us personally that we don't take that step of really reclaiming our sovereignty. We get to decide who we are and how we live, right? Even if you're at the lowest of the low, we see so many examples of people rising up from that level of injury and poverty and whatever things that they've taken on in their life, um, and start standing up for themselves. And they can do amazing things, incredible things. So to me, it's like I love what you said about, yeah, you don't have to be a shaman, but what you do have to do is believe that anything is possible.
Yep.
And what I share a lot with when I tell my story is at one point I had to believe that okay, I'm putting everything on the table. Everything is open to change. I don't have any sacred cows in my life because things are so bad right now that I'm either going to have to choose to check in or check out. And checking in looks like this. Everything can change.
Hmm.
But people are encouraged throughout their life to look at things in a very compartmentalized way. I have a problem, I need a solution. And what we learned in the lineage teachings is about Heine, about harmony and reciprocity in all things, including yourself, how you feel about yourself. And that changes the game. Once you realize you don't have a XYZ fill in the blank problem, you have an Heine problem. You're not in harmony. So how do you change your life so that you can be closer to being in harmony?
Yeah. Yeah, and you see that on a small scale, like you're mentioning just with the food and stuff, but you also see a lot of programs for like vets working on farms. And there's
Mhm.
a lot of us that I've noticed we get out and it's like, well, we just want some land and we want to be left alone. And we'll start working with animals. Like I have a hobby farm too, but it's part of that just becomes a grounding mechanism that you don't even
Yeah.
realize you're doing it because now I'm working in the dirt, I'm working with animals, I'm outside in the sun. I'm not in some city being bogged down with reality. It's like everything's just peaceful and it's
Mhm.
quiet. And part of it was like me running away, but at the same time, I was running towards that balance. It was,
Mhm.
what do I need? And there's even a saying that every plant that you need to eat for medicine that can help you grows within 5 to 10 feet of your front door. You just
Hmm.
need to know what they are. And that could be anything from like dandelions to lemon balm to chickweed, all sorts of plants will just grow. And then when you start looking at the medicinal properties of them, I was like, oh no, that's exactly what I need.
Hmm.
You know, my youngest son was having nightmares when he was younger, and we had lemon balm just growing wildly right in front of the house. Oh, dry it out, make some tea. He gets calmed down and he goes to sleep. Like the medicine you need is there and it's in nature.
Yeah.
We just got to look for it.
Yeah, 100%. We've been encouraged for so long by, and I'm not, this isn't a blame thing. This is just the consensual reality that we live in.
Yeah.
We're encouraged to give our consensus to these notions of separation, and that we need a middleman in between us and our experience of the divine or experience of nature. And we don't. Part of reclaiming your sovereignty is to doing exactly what you just described, which is realizing that Mother Earth, Pachamama, is given us everything we need to be deliriously happy and exuberantly healthy. And we don't need a middleman.
Yeah, and that's not to say, you know, you break your leg, obviously go see a doctor. There are
Sure.
some things where you need doctors, but yeah, I agree 100% of if we're in Aini, if we're balanced, if we're completely where we need to be, mind, body, spirit, you really don't need to go to the doctor. You really don't need a lot of things. Like I haven't been to a doctor in years just because I haven't needed one.
Hmm.
I get sick maybe once a year for a day or two and then I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just from taking care of myself physically, mentally, you know, everything. Doesn't make me better or worse than anyone. It's just making sure that I stay in that balance.
Yeah, it's really focusing on and embodying, allowing in. Really, it's the trust and the surrender again, allowing Aini in. It's not something you create, it's something you allow, right? It's all around us.
Yeah.
The natural state of the universe is Aini, but we block it. We convince ourselves that no, it's got to be this way and it's got to look like this and be this timing and cost this much and taste this good and whatever. We put all these things on it, right? So we see it through filtered glass. But once we start letting it in, we can start experiencing this exuberance. And I can tell you, I had a really interesting experience the other day. Everybody was getting sick, and um, I usually don't get sick. And part of the program that I've gone through of rebuilding my gut flora and everything, my immune system is just very robust, put it that way. And I started feeling sick, like I had a cold, and I went, "Oh, okay, I have a cold. All right." And just kind of accepted it. And it literally was gone in 4 hours. The next morning, it was like I never was sick, and I had a runny nose and feel achy and the whole thing. But it's the difference between your perception of how you identify with that. Like between someone saying, "Oh, I get sick every year. I get this cold every year in January," right? You're programming yourself, and that's relates to stress too. It's like it becomes part of your identity, the anxiety, right? And as horrible as it is sometimes, there's a fear in there about who am I if I'm not that? What if I let go of that? Then who am I?
Yep.
And it's almost like I'd really love to get your perspective on that, because it's almost like denying your own lived experience in a way. It's like, hey, I went through this shit and it's made me who I am, and that's part of my identity. I'm strong. I survived it, right? But what if you let it go?
Yep.
Then who are you?
Yeah, and that's hard for people to grasp because I call it desire work. And so it's, you know, what is it that you're truly after? So the example I give a lot is like, I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay. Why? Is it
Mhm.
just because you feel you need to be healthy? Is it because you're looking at TV and everybody looks like these beautiful supermodels and you don't feel like you belong? Do you really just want attention from your father, let's say? Maybe your dad always said you were fat growing up. So now if you lose these 20 pounds, your dad will love you. So now is it really about love?
Mhm.
Instead of self-worth, is it just about love? And then if you take, oh, I have PTSD, this is why I act this way. Well, what do you get out of that? Are you getting attention because you're always drinking all the time and causing trouble? And I don't know, maybe you get arrested weekly, fight with your wife. Maybe that's the only time when you're fighting with your wife or your husband or whoever that you truly feel engaged in something, because the rest of the time you're blocking everybody out,
Mhm.
and you're ignoring the world. So maybe that one time, maybe you're constantly getting drunk just so you can engage with somebody. You have to go to the bar and drink, and that's when you start fighting, but
Yeah,
you're engaging. So
right.
you're doing it the
Without
wrong
being
way.
triggered, right? You're
Yeah.
engaging without being triggered, right?
Yeah. But, so what is it you're really after? So you want that contact, you want that engagement for that example. So it's finding out what it is that you really want with your life, and then let's figure out how to get you there.
Mhm.
So it's getting out of that victim triangle,
Mhm.
being the victim, and then what is it, the observer, and then I forget right now off the top of my head.
The
But
oppressor, the victim, and the savior.
there you go.
Yeah.
And so getting out of that triangle and not being any of them, and just being you, finding out
Mhm.
what it is that you want with your life. And it could be, I just want the nightmares to go away so that I can move on.
Yeah.
That's a good start. Okay. So let's not numb the pain with alcohol or drugs. Let's figure out another way to help you release those triggers. And that's a lot with this work. I can't erase the past for you, but we
Mhm.
can reset how you react to it.
Mhm.
So what happened happened. That's never going to change, but we'll identify the triggers to it, clear those triggers, and allow you to start fresh. So now you get to choose how you react. So, for example, I had a hard time with loud noises. I couldn't do New Year's Eve anymore. When I was younger, I could do it all the time. And then once I started clearing out those triggers, last year, 4th of July, I'm out there holding a Roman candle with my 9-year-old son, just shooting them off and having a good old time because I cleared those triggers and I worked on that. It's
Mhm.
like, what is it that's really holding me back? And it's
Mhm.
identifying those. And sometimes we don't know, and that's fine too. It's really we just focus on what the outcome. What is it that you truly want? And now let's work on clearing anything that's holding you back with that. As well as resetting the fight or flight, which for some people who don't know, um, take a rabbit. A rabbit's out there in nature, just minding its own business. Suddenly a cat tries to grab it, eat it, catch it. Rabbit gets away, and you'll watch the rabbit, and the heartbeat's just super fast, just going like crazy, just going nuts, and he's all looking around, checking for that cat. But suddenly you'll notice the rabbit just stops, and
Mhm.
it just resets, and it just goes back to its regular heartbeat,
Right.
acts like nothing happened, and then it just pops off like everything's fine, and it almost didn't get killed. We as humans can't do that. Well, we can, but we have to learn how to do it.
Right.
And so we've forgotten how to do it, I guess is the right way to say it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
it's
think there's an element of biology there that we have left behind because of our higher brain
Yep.
growing, right? And it's not all sunshine and roses to have that higher brain. And that's one of the sacrifices I think we made along the evolutionary path somewhere, is that we can't just automatically reset anymore.
Yep.
Now it's a cognitive thing. It's not a physical and emotional thing, right? It's we have to bring all three together, mind, body, spirit, like you were saying, to let it go. I think I'm recalling now some of these deep conversations I had when I was doing this peer counseling for several years, and I keep getting memories of veterans that were struggling with these stress and anxiety disorders too, that talked about blaming and shaming themselves.
Mhm.
Like I can't, like you were saying earlier, I'm a man, I'm supposed to be strong, and they have this conception of what a man is, right? That's a complete story. And it may have come from a consensual reality or from a strong male figure in their life, but a lot of them shared a very similar view of what it means to be a man. And part of that is that you can't be vulnerable. And so if you took this stress disorder on, then you must be weak.
Yep.
And what we know, I think, is that even if you just look at the somatic aspect of it, that it's in your body and you're not even engaging with the emotion or the spirit, that happened to you. It's just like getting your leg broken or getting a concussion, or it's an injury. It happened to you. You can't just decide that you're weak because it happened to you. Would you decide that if you were in a car accident that wasn't your fault? Or, you're riding your bike and you fell off a cliff? I mean, it's the same thing in my view now, right? And I think a lot of men that are at the early stages of awakening still really struggle with that blame shame spiral.
Yeah, I mean, it's multifaceted too, because it's, well, I survived when he didn't,
Yeah.
or this happened, this happened to other people, but it didn't happen to me. That was my thing.
Mm,
And then it's, in that fight or flight response, like you said, it compounds and it compounds and it compounds. And so now it might have been one small thing that triggered it, but it never got reset. And then now another thing and another thing and another thing. And it just builds, builds, and builds. And then now you're out of the military and you're getting triggered again. Now it's loud noises. Now it's going even further.
right.
Car backfires, you're going nuts again. A gunshot goes off in the distance, it's going off again. Nightmares, it's going off again.
Hmm.
And sometimes I'll have to work with somebody 2 or 3 sessions and also teach them how to do it on their own, but they'll be at like 150% and I'll get them down to like 120. Then they'll come back and they're 130. Then we get down to 90. They'll come back, it's 100. Then we'll get them down to 50. And it takes time to get a fully good reset for some of these people because
Hmm.
it has been going on for so long.
Yeah.
And it's hard until you recognize it and realize that, oh, this is what's going on.
Hmm.
This is how I can take control. You're just constantly living in that state, and it's hard.
Yeah. And it's also insidious. You don't realize the other thing that was coming to me is you don't realize necessarily all the ways that it affects your life.
Mhm.
And let's say that let's leave drugs out of it for a minute because we all know what happens when you take drugs for this stuff, right? You numb out and it changes your personality and all that. But let's say that's not part of the picture. Still, whether it's anger or sadness or intense fear-based anxiety, whatever it is, you're not living your full life as who you are if there's always that screen in front of you determining your reactions to things. And you are reacting to
Hypervigilance.
things. You're not responding mindfully, you're reacting. And that takes a tremendous amount of energy for one thing, but it also is one of those things that pushes and drives people away. And if they're not aware of what's happening, it makes them change their opinions of you. Right? Oh, he used to be a nice guy. Now he's an asshole, right? It's like, well, there's a little bit more to it than that, right?
Well, it's that hypervigilance, and
Yeah.
it's you're constantly stuck in that state of either looking around, making sure nothing's coming, picking that seat at the restaurant. I used to walk in every store I'd walk in, I knew where all the exits were. I knew who was where, what was going on. And if there was a threat, a possible threat, I could kind of point them out. And it's like I was looking for it. I'm not afraid of guns or anything, but if I saw someone carrying, I paid attention because what happens if they go nuts? And
Hmm.
I'm pro guns. I have guns, I hunt and all that stuff, but I was still mindful because now I'm seeing a weapon,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. And they weren't doing anything but shopping,
Sure. Right.
but I see the weapon. We go to a restaurant. I'm sitting in a spot where I can see everything that's in the restaurant, just in
Mhm.
case. I don't know what I would do, but just in case.
Right.
and you're just constantly just aware of everything. And it just like you said, it wears you down. It makes you tired. It makes you grumpy, makes you angry, makes you sad, depressed. Your emotions are just roller coasters. And then your loved ones are like, what's wrong? Well, I can't talk to you about it because you don't understand.
Right.
Oh, you don't love me enough to talk to me about it. Why won't you just share with me? I don't understand why you can't just tell me what happened. It's like you said, you don't want to know what happened, maybe for some of these
Yeah.
folks. Or maybe I can't express fully what happened because I
Yeah.
don't know what happened.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, a lot of these men and women that come back from service, they didn't learn it in their life before service, and they
Yep.
certainly didn't learn it in service how to express
Yep.
to a
I
person
definitely
that
did
doesn't
not.
have the same lived experience, or what's the language that I use? Because obviously you don't have to tell them the horrific thing that you went through. But if you don't, then what language do you use to kind of express how you're feeling about it?
Yep.
And you don't really want to get in touch with your feelings if you're constantly being triggered. So it's like this cycle.
You just want to push it down, forget about it, move on. But
Yeah.
you can't because it's still there, regardless if mentally you want to think about it or not. And that's the thing I like about our work too, is we don't have to make you relive everything.
Yeah.
Like with some talk
Important point.
therapy, yeah, some talk therapy, you bring it up,
Yeah.
you have to relive it, you have to work through it, and that can be just as traumatizing for people. Like
Hmm.
stuff will come up in this work, but it's not quite the same way.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting there going, okay, tell me what exactly happened to you on this date, and we're going to clear that. No, I
Right.
don't. I tell people I don't care. Like, tell me where you want to be, and
Hmm.
let's work on clearing whatever's blocking you from getting there.
Yeah. That was a powerful, I remember when we were learning that, that was really powerful for me too, is the story is mildly interesting, but we go after the energy.
Yep.
And when we do something like a decoupling for resetting the fight or flight response, it's really kind of about like what you were saying. Where do you want to be? And what are you feeling in your body right now?
Mhm.
And starting to peel that away and let people understand that they can let that go through this technique, right? It's one of the simpler things we learned, but one of the most powerful things we learned. I'm still, after having done it dozens and dozens of times with people, I'm still very surprised sometimes at the intensity. Somebody, especially somebody who's never had a
Yep.
decoupling before, um, how much it releases and how much they experience. And sometimes they want to process afterwards for two or three times the amount of time the actual decoupling took, because so much came up for them. But it's just I'm saying all that to say that there's a lot there to
Mhm.
unpack, right? And talk therapy doesn't cut it in my view. And a lot of people that I've spoken to over the years that have gone through these peer counseling and the shamanic work and lots of other things, most of them have tried it.
Yep.
And I'm not saying it doesn't work for everybody or anybody. It does work for some people, but a lot of people it doesn't get to the core of that wound and
Yeah.
allow you to release it safely, right?
Yep. And sometimes it's just not enough. I mean, I don't want to discount the people who do talk therapy and those who have been through it. It does work for some people. That's why it's
Mhm.
a constant thing that people do. But it doesn't work for everyone because they don't have the rest of their stuff situated properly.
Yeah.
So, it might work for someone perfectly to work through it because they're maybe they already have a spiritual
Hmm.
connection.
Right.
Maybe they're very religious. And when I say spirit, it's like it doesn't matter if you want to work the shamanic way and travel the different realms and meet your guides there, or if you follow a Muslim or Christian belief,
Hmm.
wherever your spirit takes you, that's
Yeah.
fine. It doesn't matter what you believe in, but
Yeah.
it's having some sort of I don't even like to really use the word faith, but some sort of connection with
Yeah,
spirit.
it's an engagement, it's a connection, it's a relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's part of that. It's a critical and often overlooked part of that mind, body, spirit triangle that I believe very strongly and passionately that that is the path to healing.
Yep.
But like you're saying, the spirit looks different for everybody. There's a ancient Chinese saying, I don't know if it was Lao Tzu or another philosopher, but that there are 1,000 paths to God.
Yep.
And I believe that. And I think that the beautiful thing that I learned about shamanism that really resonated with me early on is that it's not a religion, and in fact, it's a belief system that's self-deconstructing. They tell you that as soon as you start to identify too much with your story, whether it's good or bad in your discernment, it's time to put it in the fire because it's only a story.
Yep.
You are a divine, luminous being having a mortal experience.
Yep.
And anything that is not divine and luminous and joy and love is distortion. So you can let it go and you can tell yourself a new story.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest challenge, but yeah, it's definitely it can be done and it is you can get there. It just takes time.
Yeah.
But as long as you're willing to put in the work and do it, it's a great process. And it
Yeah.
definitely helped me. And even from the shamanic side, I would say too, because sometimes, we deal with attachments and
Mhm.
intrusions. So it's sometimes after that trauma, things get attached to people, and then that's our job too, is to clear them out
Mhm.
so that you can get more healing too. And I had that as for myself was I picked up a fire elemental, and that was
Mhm.
also burning on my anger and making me angrier.
Mhm.
And I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about this stuff.
Mhm.
I was always logical working in IT. You
Yeah.
know, you told me I'd be doing this 10 years ago, I'd have thought you were crazy.
Yeah. So same here.
Yeah.
I was always, in technology and science. I was trained as a physicist, ended up going into IT. And even, yeah, 5 years ago, if you told me I'd be doing what I am now, or if you told me that I would be living even on a personal level, not the shamanic stuff, but if I was be living this way and have this level of health and having the experiences I'm having with relationships and connections with people, I would have thought that there's no way. I'm so far away from that that it's not possible. So I think both of us are saying to the people that are watching, it is possible.
Yep.
And it starts with believing it's possible. Everything else will come, but you have to be willing to let go of the things that no longer serve you, no matter what they are. Like I was saying before, no sacred cows. If you want to heal, you
Yep.
put it all on the table to be examined.
And it shifts because the work you do on yourself will ultimately shift everybody else around you without you
Yeah,
even trying. So you don't need to worry about, oh, I worked on myself. Now I need to go help grandma, or now I need to go help my dad. It's no, just continue to work on yourself.
yeah,
We have a saying in our lineage too. It's the work we do on ourselves today will help 7 generations ahead of us and behind us
right.
without even trying. We're not even focused on working on them or doing anything with them. We're working on ourselves, and it just changes everything around you.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find more people who align with you come into your circle. The
Mm-hmm.
ones who have been holding you back will leave your circle, and maybe they'll come back around again when they're
Yeah,
ready. And
right.
that's fine. You'll learn this process of non-attachment. You're not getting
Mm-hmm.
fixated on the outcome. You're just letting it happen, letting the flow, letting things go to where they need to go. And it's such a nicer process.
Yeah,
Like,
couldn't agree more. I've been saying that a lot lately that my current work on myself, I feel like I'm in the river and I'm, it's not that I'm seeking the right current, but I can tell when I'm in the right current. And it's more about releasing and allowing than finding or seeking, right? It's just letting the flow happen. And you can feel it And the more you feel it, the more you want it. And paradoxically, it's about doing less and being more. And that's a real hard one for us men and us breadwinners and providers and career people, and because we've always done the opposite.
Yep.
We gotta make it happen, damn it. We gotta go build it. Nobody's coming to help us. We gotta do it, right? And yet all of this work is so much about releasing and allowing and surrendering and being, embodying the energy, right? Allowing
Yep.
it to happen, allowing it to flow through us. So yeah, it's great to talk to you about this stuff. And we covered a lot of ground.
Oh yeah.
And I hope our viewers have enjoyed it and maybe got some ideas about some things that they'd like to work on. Jeremy and I are both available. Um, there's some overlap in our thinking and some of what we do, but we definitely have our own strong medicine about healing based on our own journeys. So I encourage you to, contact us if you want to do some of that work. No obligation. We're always available to talk and see if it's
Questions are always good. Yeah.
yeah. So with that, I thank you, brother,
Thank you.
and I thank all of our IU who's watching this, and we leave you with love and Aini.